Hello and welcome. I am Matt Roddy, and this is the Greater Prescott podcast, where we talk about, you guessed it, all things Greater Prescott. Today, my guest is Andrew Roberts. Andrew, thank you very much for joining me.
Thanks for having me, Matt. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. In this episode, you are going to get to learn a little bit about Andrew's background, what he currently does for a living. We're going to geek out on talking about golf, and then he's going to talk a little bit about what brought him to Greater Prescott and what you like about it.
Yeah.
So that's what you guys can expect today. Again, Andrew, I really, really appreciate your time. And I met you on Instagram, which is how I meet a lot of people. And the fun part for me is that, I feel like I get a little glimpse into of course you get a glimpse into people's lives. You happen to play golf, and you also talk about it in such a way that is different than the casual golfer talks about it. And I would attest that I'm also not a casual golfer. Like, I'm really into it. So we're going to geek out on golf in a little bit. To set the context, please share with the listeners a little bit about your background, born and raised, what you were doing when you were a kid, and bring us a little bit up to date on where you went to school and things like that.
Okay. So I was born in Iowa, which is 1,500 miles from here in the Midwest. It's bordered by Minnesota, Wisconsin, Illinois, Missouri, Nebraska, and South Dakota. So it's basically packed in the middle. It's a little bit similar to here, so there's a lot of livestock there. We have a lot of cows, chickens, pigs, corn, soybeans. So basically you drive through Iowa and you see like hog confinements, you see like cornfields, but it's for the most part, it's fairly flat. There's some corners of the state where it's a little up and down. So I was born there in a town of Cedar Rapids, which is about 120,000. And then my parents and I grew up in a town called Independence, which was 6,000. Okay. So I'm used to living in a little bit of small town. So I did that. Grew up there my whole life, graduated high school from there.
What'd your parents do there?
My dad's still a lawyer there, so he's a general practice, so he does power of attorney, living will, and testament. He, when there are estate sales, he handles the legal work with that, and he has another friend that does the auction, so very similar. He also does taxes because he worked for the IRS for 2 years in the real estate and tax division when he came back after serving in the judge's advocate general in Stuttgart, Germany.
I'm always curious what people do in small towns.
Yeah, and then my mom's a retired school psychologist. She's been retired for 11 years now.
Awesome.
So my brother's married and has 2 kids. That one is almost 6 and the other one's 4. So she tries to spoil them as much as she can. Grandma. So did that. Went to the University of Northern Iowa in Cedar Falls, which is about the same size as here, 40,000 people. Got my bachelor's in communication studies, then went down to the Des Moines area, which is the capital of Iowa. I did some work, was the director of youth ministry, and then did some work for Wells Fargo, but that was during the 2008 financial crisis. So, the director of youth ministry thing didn't work out. Did that for 3 months, and then did 3 months at Wells Fargo, then got pink slip because I was young. So I was trying to figure out what to do again. So I volunteered at an elementary school just to see if teaching was interested. It interested me, so I went back for that. Then I kind of focused on physical education, teaching. But then I was like, I don't know if I want to be a teacher, kind of going through the back and forth. So my friend's like, why don't you think about doing strength and conditioning? I mean, you've been lifting since you were like 13. Okay. And I was like, all right, I'll try it. So we had a really good strength coach at UNI by the name of Jed Smith, and he does some he's done the North Central Region Conference for the National Strength and Conditioning Association, the NSCA, which is out of Colorado Springs, and they have different regions. Like the region we're in right now is the Rocky Mountains, so we're grouped with like Colorado, Utah, Arizona.
Here in Arizona, that's who we're grouped with.
Yeah, so that's where I would go somewhere. Gotcha. So I did that. My second bachelor's is movement and exercise science. So then I moved down to the Kansas City area, lived in Overland Park for 2 years. I did an internship at the beginning, and then I was a part-time personal trainer and worked at Hy-Vee, which is a local grocery store chain, kind of similar to like Fry's around here, stuff like that. So couldn't find my niche for a couple of years down there. Then I moved back to Iowa, went to Davenport, which is our Quad Cities. Around here I know they have the Quad Cities with everything, but we have Davenport, Bendorf, Iowa, Rock Island, Moline, Illinois. So I did personal training there. Okay. And then my friend's like, you know, you work a lot of hours and don't get a lot of money. I was like, yeah. And he's like, what do you think about physical therapy? I was like, what are you talking about? Like, I have no idea. I had no idea at the time what physical therapy was. So I did like 120 hours of shadowing and just fell in love with it. Yeah. So then I moved back to Cedar Rapids, the Cedar Rapids area. So I started taking classes at Kirkwood Community College in Cedar Rapids. So I took anatomy, physiology, biology, physics, chemistry, statistics, trig. And then my other job besides personal training was once a week I was a tutor in the anatomy physiology lab. And the nice thing about Kirkwood was we were the only community college in Iowa that got cadavers. We got cadavers from the University of Iowa because the University of Iowa has a high-level medical school, all that program. So we got those, and then we give them back in the spring. Yeah. So we get them in the fall, get them back in the spring because some of those bodies would want to be like cremated and things like that at the family's wishes. So interesting. So I did that. I applied to PT school for 2 years, had 4 interviews as a finalist at places, and never got in. So I was a little bit discouraged. I was like, what can I do? So ended up doing physical therapist assistant, which is almost the same, and ended up doing that at Kirkwood again. So I did that for 2 years. Graduated last May from that program, passed the boards in July, was looking around the Midwest for jobs, Iowa, Illinois, kind of all the ones I mentioned, Missouri, Kansas, Ohio, Indiana. Had a couple finalist jobs, couldn't get in. Then I had put my website on like Indeed.com, Monster.com, Glassdoor, Career Builder. And then a lady from the People's Link emailed me, and I'd never heard of it. And she said, PTA jobs in South Carolina. And I was like, this sounds like spam. So I ignored it for 5 days, and then she sent me the same thing. So I called her back, and I said, what's the deal with this? And she said, oh, there's a job in Bluffton, in Hilton Head Island. Bluffton's like 10 miles away from that. PT's looking for a PT at his clinic. And I said, okay. She's like, do you have a resume? I said, I have a resume, cover letter, and references. So I gave it to her. She said, I'll call you back in 2 days. So she called me back in 2 days and said, okay, he really liked your background, personal training, strength and conditioning, but you didn't have 5 years of experience. I said, that's fine. That's how he wants to run his business. Yeah. And a lot of people know that, the way business is run. Yes. So then she throws me a curveball and said, have you heard of Prescott, Arizona? And I said, no. I was like, I have no idea where that is on a map. And she goes, oh, it's about 2.5 hours south of the Grand Canyon, about an hour and a half, 2 hours north of Phoenix. I said, okay. So she's like, I'll just take your resume, cover letter, everything, send it to him. So that was I think it was like on a Monday or Tuesday. Then I got a call on a Friday from a 928 number, which I didn't know at the time was Prescott. And it was Cece Odefer, who's the clinic director for the Prescott Valley Clinic of Center for Physical Excellence. So she talked to me for an hour and was like, all right, I like what I hear. I'll give you to our owner, Laura Markey, who owns all 3 clinics. So we have the Crossings Clinic over here at Willow Creek. We have one on Idlewild on the west side of town, Idlewild Drive. And then there's one in Prescott Valley in Long Look, which is near Bradshaw Mountain High School, just off Glassford Hill. So she was the owner of that. And she basically said that she'll get back to you on Monday. I said, okay, that gives, 2-3 days. Well, Laura, being the savvy business person that she is, she emailed me on Saturday and said, hey, can you talk tomorrow? And I said, okay, so that really impressed me. So she talked to me for an hour, so I ended up having 2 one-hour interviews. And then she's like, I want you to interview with Nicole Berry, who's the administrative director for the Center for Physical Excellence. And I said, all right. So I did another hour phone interview. So I had 3 one-hour phone interviews. So I was basically being grilled, and I was like, all right, maybe this will turn out. And then she's like, I want to do a Skype interview because I was still in Iowa, and I'm not gonna hop on a plane and then say I'm not gonna get the job. So there's risks, and then
of course,
yeah. So then I did the Skype interview, but Laura had emailed me an hour beforehand and said, I'm pretty confident that you'll want to be here. I like your resume. I like what you bring to the table. Here's what we're offering. So she offered, put the salary, signing bonus, full benefits, all these things. So I had everything on the table. So then I did the Skype interview, and that was like Wednesday, and it was about this time last year that it was. So I had 2 other job prospects. I had one in Clinton, Iowa, which is on the border of Iowa, Illinois, and then Davenport, where I had been, and that was 30 minutes south of that. So I called the Clinton place that next Monday and said, hey, what's the deal? And they said, oh, we're thinking about hiring 2, maybe 3. And I said, okay, what's the salary? Well, it's $10,000 less. So I said, thanks for the offer. I'm going to pull myself out of consideration. So then the next day I had an interview with HR with the Davenport job. And she said, I just want to let you know right off the bat that this is a part-time job. And I said, well, that wasn't clear from the website. And she said, oh. And I said, what's the salary? So it was $8,000 less. So I said, okay. I was like, all right. So then I emailed Laura that afternoon and I said, I'm taking the job. Well, the only other thing I had to do because I had passed the boards, the MPTE, the National Physical Therapy Examination that tests both physical therapist assistants, is Arizona requires you to take what's called the jurisprudence exam, which is a moral and ethical 40-question test about the code of conduct for PTs and PTAs in the state, which that was better than they give you 4 hours for the MPTE, and I think they give you an hour and a half or 2 for the jurisprudence. Okay. So I used 2.5 for the MPTE and about 40 minutes to an hour for the jurisprudence, and I passed both of them. So I sent all my information to Nicole, and then 2 weeks later I packed up my car, drove from Iowa to Gurley, Oklahoma the first night, which was 12 hours, and then from Gurley to here, 11 and a half. And I got here August 20th last year and started work on the 22nd for the Center for Physical Excellence.
That's awesome.
Mm-hmm.
I love hearing how people get here because our demographics here are on the older side, and so most people are at the end of their work career, or they're done working and they're retiring. And so hearing a story like, just in a sense, almost randomly, you end up in Prescott, Arizona, which is hilarious.
Yeah.
Nice. So you've been here almost a year.
Yeah.
Tell everyone what you do, and let's talk about your job.
Okay, I'm a physical therapist assistant at the Center for Physical Excellence, and I work at the clinic that is in the crossings at Willow Creek.
Okay.
And I always joke with people, I'm like, yeah, we got the healthcare covered on this street because we have, orthopedic surgeon's office,
it's a mecca.
Doctor's office, dentist's office. So there's a lot of primary care providers. I know Dr. Cabaluna's in there, Dr. Covey. We have the orthopedic surgeons we work with, Dr. Birchfield Williams, and Pfeiffer is another one. But so obviously throughout the day I see individuals that come in and they first get an initial eval or consult with our physical therapist, which we have 6 or 7 at our Crossings clinic.
Wow.
And then there are 3 physical therapist assistants, including myself, at that clinic. And then obviously there are 2 physical therapists and 1 physical therapist assistant at the West Clinic on Ottawa Drive.
Real quick, there's a sound that I keep hearing. I don't know if it's a cord. Do you hear anything in your background?
Mm-mm.
All right. I'm sorry to keep telling us about how many people and things.
Yeah, so there's 2 physical therapists and 1 physical therapist assistant at the West Clinic on Ottawa Drive.
Okay.
And then there's 3 physical therapists and 2 physical therapist assistants at the Longwood Clinic in PB. Okay. So obviously our clinic is the biggest because we have a therapy gym. Then we have the aquatic therapy pool.
Oh, wow.
And then we have what's called the Athletic Performance Center Prescott, which is our regular gym. So if you go onto my Instagram and my Facebook, that's where I film a lot of my videos, is in the Athletic Performance Center, because I have all the equipment at my disposal, and there's plenty of space where I can record a video of strength and conditioning stuff or anything that I want to bring to the public domain. So so I'm usually there from 9 a.m. to 6:30 p.m. Monday through Thursday, and then 7:45 p.m. to 5 on Fridays. So and each clinic hours varies, but usually our clinic is 7 a.m. to 6:30 p.m. Monday through Thursday, and then 7 a.m. to 5 p.m. on Friday.
Okay.
So and then the Athletic Performance Center is open Monday through Saturday.
Gotcha.
So that's open a little earlier. Monday through Friday, it's 5 a.m. to 6 p.m. Fridays, it's 5 a.m. to 5 p.m. And then Saturdays, it's 7 a.m. to 12 p.m.
Okay.
So,
loaded.
Yeah. So we do a lot of business. We see anybody from work comp to retired individuals, Medicare, Medicaid from the state, which is the Access One Care.
Yep.
Or just pretty much any insurance, United Healthcare, Humana, things like that. So, and we have insurance specialists up front that can answer any questions about that, and a financial director that if they have any questions about what they're being billed and things like that, they can do that. So, yeah, the whole gamut's covered.
The whole gamut. I'm naive when it comes to physical therapy. I suppose that is a good thing, meaning I haven't stepped foot in an office like yours. So explain what types of, I mean, you sprinkled in a little bit of workers' comp and some other things, but what's the essence of people coming in that they need, and then how you guys, in fact, work through the process of helping them?
Yeah, so the process is, we get a wide variety of injuries. So it could be, we get a lot of shoulders. So like, shoulder injuries, shoulder pain, things called shoulder impingement where you may not be able to move it as far.
Okay.
We see surgeries, rotator cuffs, labral repairs, decompressions, total shoulders, reverse shoulders. We see a lot of total joints, obviously, with this kind of population. So total knee replacements, total hip replacements, total shoulder replacements. We work with some athletes, obviously, ACL, MCL, the knee. We basically work with anybody. And another thing, one of the therapists I work with that's a specialist, that anybody that has vertigo, so you feel like the room's spinning, dizziness.
My in-laws, they both struggled.
Cervicogenic headaches, so the pain starts at the neck and then just in the head and it kind of works down. Stuff like that. We have a therapist that I work with that's really good at that. So we can basically treat about anything. A lot of times all we just ask for people is to either go to their primary care provider or get a referral from their specialist, whether it's like an orthopedist or neurologist or things like that, just because it makes the initial evals for the PT easier, and then you can come back quicker. You can come to our office and do an eval without a referral from a doctor, but then that doctor has to sign off on the plan of care. So that may take a little bit longer. So a lot of times
part of the process.
So we just ask people to kind of bring a referral because it makes it easier for us, and then we can get the ball rolling.
Yeah. Okay. Man, you guys see a lot of things.
Yeah, we do.
That actually sounds enjoyable in a sense where when someone walks in, you don't know what's going on, and 10 people walk in with 10 different things. It's like, all right, this is fun. It's not the same thing every time. Now, of course, you have specialists, but even them, there's such nuances with our bodies.
Exactly. And nobody's anatomy is the same as some other people. Some people, like, for example, the upper leg bone, the femur. Some people's may be longer because they're taller. Some people's may be shorter because of their height. Some people's hips may be wider. Some people may have their feet turned out. Some people may have their feet turned in because of the way their hip socket's shaped up. And, we could, like, for example, we could see 2 rotator cuffs from the same surgeon. So let's say like Dr. Pfeiffer. They don't present exactly the same.
Of course not.
Because everybody's body's different. Everybody has a different healing capacity. We can't speed up the healing capacity, but we can definitely impede it. And our goal with physical therapy is to not impede that healing process and to find the right combination of manual therapy, which is we do a lot of soft tissue work, some joint mobilizations. Physical therapists can do, manipulations, things like that, very similar to chiropractors. And then we pair it with exercise and patient education. So that's kind of why I love my background, is because I'm very biased towards education.
Yeah.
And education, whether it's the patient, exercise they should be doing at home, what they do in the clinic that's in a controlled environment, because I believe that gets us the most bang for our buck in the long-term effects. And what I tell patients most of the time is, I want you every session to feel like you were empowered, that you were more independent, that you can walk out here and either get closer to your activities you used to do daily, functional stuff, or that you feel better.
Amen.
So that's kind of the thing I lay out for them.
Yeah.
Because if you don't get buy-in, or what's called a therapeutic alliance between you and the patient, then therapy becomes, I don't know if it becomes difficult, but it becomes a lot harder than it should be.
Absolutely. It's going to take longer. It's going to be harder for all sides. It's like that in no matter what business you do. If you don't get buy-in from the people you're serving, it's challenging.
It is. And then if going to a business model kind of on that, if you don't serve the customer with quality products, your brand is not going to be recognized. So you can put all the ads on Facebook, Instagram, but if you got like a 2-star in like Yelp or somewhere, nobody's going to want to come.
Right.
And if they realize that the people working there are 2-star employees too, that gives you another issue. So with an organizational culture within a business, that's kind of the hard thing. But at the Center for Physical Excellence, we try to empower our patients as much as we can, get them back to things, because we have a pretty active population around here.
We do. Mm-hmm.
So we have people that come from all gamuts. So we have a lot of hikers. We have a lot of pickleball players, and I found out that was a huge thing. We have people that play in adult softball leagues here. We have people that just want to be able to walk the block. We have tennis players. We have golfers. We have people that ski. Either they go up to like Colorado or California. They go up to Snowbowl up in Flagstaff. I mean, we have a wide variety of individuals that do recreational activities. Or, with the work comp, they just want to get back to work because they really like their work. And we have a wide variety, obviously, of workers. We see anybody that, does air conditioning or duct work, to office people, to, even people like us in the healthcare. We do see some nurses, some doctors, and stuff like that. So,
no one is exempt from physical issues.
No. Nope.
I love to hear you talk. I love to hear an expert talk about what they do, and those nuances that someone would look at a PT and think they know, and then you start listening, and what I love is that there's someone who's an expert in your clinic on a certain body part. What area are they an expert in? Yeah,
so we have a lot of people that are experts. So one of the guys I work with, Jeremy Jordan, who's a physical therapist I'm under, he was the guy I was talking about that's very good with vertigo, dizziness, cervicogenic headaches. So that's kind of one of the things he specializes in. My specialty, and you kind of alluded to it, is golfers. So I see a lot of, with golf, there's a lot of shoulder. Mid-back, which is called thoracic spine, low back, lumbar spine, hips, hands, wrists, elbows, because all those parts are moving during the golf swing with those things. We have a couple people, Nick Lewick, who's a PT, and Alan Johnson, who's a PTA. They both are rock climbers and lifters. So
awesome.
They go to Gripstone quite frequently out in Prescott, and so they're very familiar with that, and some of the athletes and things like that. So everybody has a little bit of a specialty in our office, really or cool. in the West Side Prescott office or the Prescott Valley office. Yeah. So, don't hesitate to call any of those offices so we can direct you to a person.
Exactly.
If you're experiencing something, you saw your primary care, you're not satisfied, not necessarily with what was told, but you want to get better. Yeah. And you can just do, if you want to, you can just do a 15 to 20 minute consult with us.
Gotcha.
But if you do want to do an initial eval, that'd be a great time. A lot of times the referring provider will send it over, but also sometimes just to call and make sure that we've got all your information too.
Yep. I once heard a talk by a cancer doctor, and to me, cancer's cancer, and he was literally an expert in cancer found from the bottom of the neck to like the top of the chest, or like this tiny little sliver, and he was an expert when cancer's in that area, and he talked about how the other cancer doctors were experts in different areas of the body, and so that it just goes along the lines with what you're saying, that the body is so specific, and your interest is golf, and so you're able to get into that, and the other guys and gals at the clinic have their niche, which is really cool.
And one of the things that people don't realize is they think physical therapy is kind of generalized. In some ways it is. We serve the general population.
Well, that's why I started with I'm naive. It's PT to me, and I don't really know anything. I don't know the depth.
So within the American Physical Therapy Association, which is our national organization, they do have specialist tests that you can take. So like for ours, there'd be like an orthopedic clinical specialist, that deals with musculoskeletal. There is a geriatric clinical specialist. One of my rotations, I worked with a GCS that serves the older population, which obviously they would fit in here. Because, they have geriatric doctors and nurses and things like that. They also have a neurological clinic specialist, so people that work with strokes, which are known as cerebrovascular accidents, mini strokes, trans-ischemic attacks, TIAs, or anybody that's having a neurological issue such as Parkinson's, grand mal seizures, any type of seizure, stuff like that. Neuropathy, whether it's, peripheral where it affects the extremities like the hands, upper arms, legs or feet or stuff like that, or neuropathy in general, or some people that may have some neurological conditions that reduce their ability to stay balanced in standing or be able to coordinate themselves walking or getting up from a chair or changing positions. So they have, the APTA has all these specialties. Now, not everybody takes those tests, obviously, because you have to, pay like $400, $500 and stuff like that for the test and the booklet. But it's also a good way to kind of specialize yourself. But like in our clinic, everybody has a niche and, specialty on that. But we do, we still see the general population. I mean, we recognize we don't want to be too picky, but also sometimes, our front desk had us fill out forms of things we wanted to see. So a lot of us filled it out. And, we like to see who we like to see because we like to provide quality care. But sometimes we'd like to see some people that are more in our niche. So. That's what we focused on.
That's awesome. That's really cool. I've never learned that much about the PT world.
Well, one thing is that we don't brand ourselves very well, and I've had a lot of conversations with friends of mine or acquaintances that are PTs, and we don't brand ourselves very well. I mean,
I get what you're.
Some of the other, we're talking in your expertise, a marketing perspective. I mean, we still get clients obviously from referrals, but sometimes we don't brand ourselves well. Like we can treat this, stuff like that. We just kind of assume that people know, and there are some
no clue,
and there are some people that are like, oh, PT. Well, a lot of times we still hear my doctor referred me over here, and it's like, okay, well, that's a good start, but I'm going to teach you some more things,
right?
And sometimes they're like, well, I had this surgery, my doctor didn't really talk about it. Can you walk me through it, or can you walk me through what body parts are affected? So then there's the buy-in with the patient education and the therapeutic alliance right there.
Yeah, man, I think one of the biggest gaps, and I think you'll understand what I mean. There's such a gap between a product that's offered in providing education for the person that it's for, and that education is massively important, and I feel like it's often not given the time necessary because it takes time and resources. For someone like you to really harp on education, it in a sense it takes away from maybe what you actually are doing in the clinic with someone. However, once that person leaves, if they don't have any of that kind of that foundation that you have alluded to earlier, there's definitely a loss for people. And so I'm really glad that you speak to educating people. I feel like it could be something that someone comes in the clinic, I got a hurt shoulder, and you go, okay, well, like, let me educate you a little bit. And they're like, nope, I'm good. And you're like, okay, but when you leave here, it's not going to click in the same way. Stuff's just not going to crystallize. And so I like how you have talked about education.
Well, and that goes to a good point. Why do you think these businesses have so many R&D people, research and development? Because it is the education of them building a new product, building a new service, and it's how can we inform the public? It's kind of the same with us. Some people do not want to be educated. They're just like, I just want to get this over. And we have, and kind of the running joke is we have frequent flyers in the clinic. We see some people, hopefully it's not for the same thing, but sometimes we do. We have no problem treating them, and it's still a joy to treat them. But sometimes, like you're talking about, it may take 2, 3, 4 sessions, 5 sessions, 6 sessions to get that buy-in. And they're like, oh, now I get it. I'm like, yeah, I've been saying this for 4 sessions. In your head, you don't say it out loud, but you're like, oh, yeah. So people a lot of times want to see progress, and sometimes with the surgeries and things like that, the surgeon has seen it. Then they go for a follow-up. They may see their PA, who's still in communication with them because, PAs have to have an attending physician or doctor or surgeon underneath them. But sometimes they don't always get the answer they want, so they just kind of shut down. And then eventually when you get through them, they're like, oh, yeah, that makes sense. Yeah. Because, not necessarily with my patients, with some of the one I hear around the clinic, like, well, the doc didn't explain this to me well, or things like that. Mm-hmm. And it's not that sometimes I don't think it's that the doc didn't explain it well. It's because of certain barriers they have with such things as reimbursements with insurance and then the volume of patients in their clinic that they can't spend enough time. Now, should they do better? Sure.
They could.
Can we all do better? Absolutely. Yeah. And there are times they're just patients where I'm like, honestly, I don't. Like the hardest thing to say in our field or field of science is I don't know, because everybody thinks it's black and white. And you see with some of the stuff that goes on in science, especially now with the COVID thing, one is people can't see it, and number two, they're like, when is this going to be done? When is it going to get better? And, guys like Dr. Fauci, who's the head of the National Infectious Disease and Allergy Institute, and Dr. Carl Bergstrom, who's got a PhD in evolutionary biology, are like, this could continue for a while. But, and also the predictions are an inexact science, too. So when we're talking about physical therapy, like, for example, we got a rotator cuff. Each surgeon has a different protocol. And what I tell people is usually the time frame is within about 6 to 9 months. You should be feeling about 80, maybe 85, 90% at the best.
But I don't like that, Andrew.
I know that, and that goes into that. That was a perfect segue. Yeah. But so I tell them some people may feel better at 5 months. Some people may take 10 to 11. Usually with surgeries, it's like a 9 to 12 month recovery time, especially if it's a rotator cuff, ACL, total knee, total hip. A little bit, not huge traumas, but bigger surgeries.
Absolutely.
But the total knee is the most common orthopedic surgery in the United States, and I saw a research article that said by 2030, we may have 500,000 total knees done in the United States every year, which is crazy. Oh. But if it gives people relief, I'm cool with that, because guess what they're going to need after that? Physical therapy to restore that bending, what's called flexion, and the straightening, what's called extension. But I tell them with the protocol that these are averages of thousands and thousands of people. So the majority of people fit into here, but there are outliers that will get better earlier, and there are outliers that'll take longer, because everybody's different, and some things like previous activity level, a little bit of genetics, not everything, and just how your healing process in your body will dictate how that goes, unfortunately. And they're like, okay, I suppose. I was like, yeah, I'm sorry, I can't give you a more answer.
I wish I could tell you that, next week you're going to be feeling about 95%.
Yeah.
Oh, man.
And there's some people that come in for 2 sessions, they feel great, and then they come in the next session, I'm really sore, and this is really like a different feeling. I'm like, yeah, because I either progressed our exercises or we're doing a little bit more. Totally. And I'm like, this goes back to a strength and conditioning principle, specific adaptation to impose demands. So if you want to be able to move your arm out to the side or out front, you got to keep doing that, because then your body will get used to it, and they'll develop that coordination pattern, then the strength and endurance from those muscle fibers, and then you'll be able to do it. But it's not going to happen overnight either. And I think that's what a lot of people think sometimes.
Yeah. Yep. Let's segue to golf, but specifically your interest in helping golfers not only improve in general. To set the context, I started attending college in a PGA program, PGM program.
Professional golf management. Yeah.
Exactly. So I did my first year thinking I wanted to do the pro shop thing, the teaching thing.
Yeah.
I segued into the maintenance side of things. That's absolutely where more of my passion is. However, I love the golf swing. Like, there's something, it's my favorite sport. And not only is the psychology, which we may get into just a little bit, just the physics of it as well. So one of the things that struck me about Andrew was, I think at least on the weekends, you definitely go to the golf course.
Yeah, absolutely.
And you hit it pretty hard. And you talk about it in such a way that I think, that's what I was doing when I was in high school, playing a ton of golf. And so talk a little bit about your PT experience and golf, and just kind of bring those two together to sort of give people a sense. I kind of want to talk about the golf swing. I think that's where I'm getting at. So bring it all together, because to me, this is fascinating, and we have a ton of golfers where we're at.
Yeah, well, obviously with Prescott Lakes, Capitol Canyon, Talking Rock. So you have a lot of people that belong to private clubs, and I do treat quite a few people, mainly from Prescott Lakes, because it's about 1.5 miles from our crossings location. So I talk with a lot of them. I've treated some people from Capitol Canyon and Talking Rock. I also treat people that play the public courses like Antelope Hills, both the north and the south. Prescott Golf and Country Club in Dewey, which I spend a lot of my time practicing because I live in PV. Stone Ridge, or they may go up to like Sedona or Cornville or just all across Arizona, because one of the things that struck me about Arizona is I really like golf in Iowa, but we have a limited time that we play. We play from about April to end of October, maybe early November if we get nice weather. But after that, I mean, it's so cold. So, and the surfaces are a little bit different. So we have a lot of bent grass, but it's one that can handle the harsh winters, and bluegrass, which is some of the stuff they have up here.
A little.
Just a slightly different. I think it's an Alaska bluegrass up here, because obviously we're closer to there. And up where we are, there's Kentucky bluegrass is what it is, just because of the climate and everything. But the golf swing is interesting to me because there are a lot of moving parts. So basically the head and the neck are about the only thing that don't move during the golf swing. And sometimes
have you seen some people swing?
Yeah,
it may move.
Yeah, but so very, very rarely. But if you look at the guys who are consistent, the head and the neck doesn't move. Sometimes the feet don't move. The exceptions, obviously, if we go to the PGA Tour, Justin Thomas and Bubba Watson, they're almost swinging out of their shoes, which, I mean, it's fine and it's fun to watch. But they have done that consistently for years and years and years, and that's what their coaches want. So, one of the things, I've written 2 articles for the Center for Physical Excellence. So if you go to centerforphysicalexcellence.com and you search, I believe it's the news tab on the website, I've written 2 articles. 3 actually.
I'll put a link as well.
Yeah, so 3 articles. One is about why strength matters for the golf swing. And part of the reason I got into golf is I watched the 97 Masters, and we all know what happened. A 21-year-old.
That's how I got into golf.
Yeah. With 21-year-old by the name of Tiger Woods won it, and he looked like an athlete. And I was like, sweet.
Yeah.
I want to be like him. And all the guys, the Justin Thomases, the Brooks Koepkas, the Dustin Johnsons, the Patrick Reeds, we could go on and on about it. The reason I got into golf is because Tiger made golf cool, and he made it look fun. Okay? Going back to the golf swing, people enjoy golf, obviously, one, because they can get out in nature and enjoy things. And around Arizona, we have some gorgeous courses. We have some really gorgeous courses. So you want to have fun. The other thing is people want to be able to swing the golf club and not, what's called shank it. So, like, top it, hit it one way, hit it way to the right, pull it way to the left, chunk it, making divot go further than the golf ball. So one thing I look at the 3 places I really look at. Number 1 is the shoulders. Number 2 is the mid-back and low back. And number 3 is the hips, okay? With the shoulders, they start square. Basically, they're parallel to the golf ball. So if you can imagine, the golf ball is down, shoulders are parallel. Basically, with the club in the hand, you're turning the shoulders, which makes the golf club go back. The other places where we turn are the mid-back, because those vertebrae are smaller to allow us to rotate our body. And then our hips also help us rotate our body because they're attached to the back, which is attached to the sacrum, which is attached to the hips. So the low back, the sacrum, and the hips almost form a kind of a triangle that moves. Now, the low back really can't rotate. I think they've shown that, at its top level, it can rotate maybe 8 degrees, which is really small.
Okay.
The mid-back, trying to think, I think it's like 50 to 60 degrees of rotation. So you see the big gap there. Okay, so you need to be able to turn behind the ball for right-hand golfer, turn into and shift that weight to that left side. And then when you come down, this is where a lot of people create their speed. The misnomer is you start shoulders down and you almost cast it like a fishing rod. Well, now what you've done when you've cast it, you've lost power. So you either have to get the golf club on track or you have to clear your mid-back, midline, core area and hips at the same time. A lot of times people are out of sync because golf requires, a little bit of rotation from the shoulders, mid-back, and hips. Everybody's anatomy is different, so it's going to look different. If you look at two people's swings, you put them side by side, they're not going to be alike. I don't care how much you say.
They can't be.
No.
Yeah.
And you look at, like, for example, Butch Harmon is a high-level coach that lives in Henderson, Nevada, which is just outside of Las Vegas. He's coached Tiger Woods, Ricky Fowler, Dustin Johnson, Brooks Koepka, all of that. You could put Tiger's swing. So one of the things they used to say is Tiger Woods and Adam Scott's swing. Adam Scott is an Australian who still is coached by Butch Harmon. Tiger obviously is not. He's kind of doing his thing on his own. Put them side by side, and people used to say, oh, Adam Scott's swing looks like Tiger's. And I used to think that for a while, but the more you look at it, they are both different. So if we look at Tiger's swing like in his prime of 2000 where he won, I think, 8 or 9 times, and we look at Adam Scott's swing, over the course of the last several years, sure, some of the parts and some of the keys, are similar, but the swing is not exactly the same. So with people, with the shoulder turn, with the mid-back turn, with the hip turn, some people may have more shoulder and mid-back turn. Some people may have mid-back hip turn. It depends on what you do. But going back to dropping that club down, if you cast it, a lot of times people try to rush that. They're going to block it way right because the face is going to go from here to open and then boom. Or if they rush the transition on everything and they like, oh, I need to flip it through. They flip the wrist through. That's a pull hook.
Yep.
Okay. So there's a rhythm. So we start with our hips and low back and mid back. So the rotation starts with hips, mid back, low back, then the shoulders follow because basically you want a triangle. So you want a triangle between the hands, elbows, and shoulders at impact where the left arm is fairly straight, the right arm is fairly straight too. There might be a little bit of bend so you can square that club head up. Because basically, I should be able to almost draw a straight line from your head down to the face of the golf club or where it's going to contact with the golf ball. And the problem becomes if that line's behind, you're hitting down on the ball, and that's not good with a driver. Maybe with irons and wedges, that's fine because you want to hit down on that golf ball to get it height. With a driver, you want to sweep it like a broom. So like your drivers, your woods, for those people who have enough speed to hit long irons, 3-4, or your hybrids, you want to sweep that like a broom. Then when we get to about 6 iron, 7 iron or so, you want to hit down with the descending blow. So you want to catch the ball first instead of the turf because, one, that's going to launch the ball in the air, which is called launch angle. So, for example, optimal launch angle for a driver is about 11 to 15 degrees. Okay. So that is the contact from the ball in the face to its ascent. And then it hits its apex, and usually the apex of the driver is probably about 110 to 120 feet, which means its highest point of measurement. Yeah. And then it comes down, obviously, with top spin, so the ball is rolling forward. Now, that's pretty much what it should be with Woods drivers hybrids, so you're not going to get a lot of spin. So that's why a lot of people have gone to like 5 woods, 7 woods, 3, 4, 5 hybrids because you can get a little more spin on it and they can land softly.
Okay.
Because some of the golf courses in any place and some of the tougher golf courses in this state are firm and fast. So if you hit it like on the green, it's going to it's going to roll off. But then with like a 6 iron through your wedges, you want to hit down. So that obviously increases the height. So the apex and the launch angle are going to be a little bit higher for that. Then that's going to give you backspin, so it's going to roll backwards. So it's basically with the top spin it's rolling like clockwise, and with the backspin it's rolling counterclockwise, which means, for example, let's say you're hitting like a 52, 54 degree wedge in. Let's say you have like 100 yards. A lot of times people will carry it 105 because they know they can spin it back, or the good players can. So that's kind of what you want to do in the combination of the grooves on the wedges and the golf ball and things like that. So there's all those things. But so kind of go back, there's a lot of moving parts with the golf swing, but everybody has a different piece to the golf swing.
It's amazing.
Well, you can like I said, you can line up 2 people and nobody's going to have the exact same swing.
Yeah, just go stand on the range at a PGA Tour event
or
at your Muni course.
I will honestly, I will watch people at like Prescott Golf and Country Club or Antelope Hills, and I will look at them, I'll kind of have this look and I'll be like, okay, what's he missing? And a lot of times I'll tell you what people are missing is they're missing mid-back and hip rotation. And a lot of times what I've seen out here is hip rotation. Okay? So what happens if you don't have hip rotation? Well, there is a principle in physics called ground reaction force. So basically what I tell people is it's like a deadlift, okay? When you are deadlifting, you're pulling the bar up from the floor, from the feet to the waist height. So it's one lift that you can do probably the most weight.
Okay.
The key is a lot of times people say, pull the bar. And there's nothing wrong with that. But one of the better keys is push the feet into the floor, because when you're pushing the feet into the floor, that'll make it easier to pull the bar off the ground. Same idea with the golf swing. In order to use that ground reaction force, you're pushing your feet into the ground. So when you turn, your feet are still into the ground. Then when you make that turn down, the downswing, that ground reaction force goes to the core, but then it centers itself around the hip rotation. And there's a principle called torque. So basically, the hip rotation, the faster you can rotate, or the rhythm, the more power and distance you can create. So when people don't have hip rotation, they're losing power, basically saying, okay, mid-back, shoulders take over. And for a lot of times, they either cast the club or they just stop the hip rotation. So let's say instead of hitting it 220, they may hit it like 195, 200. Okay. And that could be a simple solution where we just need to get you some hip rotation. So you do it in the golf swing, and then you do it with some strength training and things like that, working on range of motion. Yeah. So that's one thing I see a lot.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Because we use forces all over, and especially in the golf swing. The best players and the most powerful players use that ground reaction force to their advantage, and they're also strong in the lower body and upper body that they can handle. Even if their swing's like a millimeter off, they can make that correction. On the downswing, or even when they get to the top. Yeah, because everybody has a different top position, bottom position, all that. So
everything. That's one reason I love the golf swing.
Yeah.
Talk a little bit about the psychology of golf. It might not be your expertise necessarily, but it's not, you play, so I know you're into it.
It's not, but you look at the top level players, okay? I mean, people don't understand, like with the PGA Tour, even like the Korn Ferry, which used to be the Web.com Tour, the LPGA Tour, or just any
the Junior Tour.
Anybody you look at, the best players. So let's say. One thing I hate doing is making a bogey on a par 5, because I can reach a lot of par 5s and stuff like that. Yeah, exactly. So let's say you make a bogey in a par 5. The best players will bounce back, and they might roll together a string of pars, or they might get a birdie and a few pars on that. The players that are affected by that are going to make a bogey. They may make a par the next hole, but then they make a bunch of bogeys. And mindset is huge. A lot of these guys have hired, one of the big guys that used to be around, and I'm sure he's still around, is the sports psychologist Dr. Bob Rotella. Yeah. So he worked with a lot of golfers back in the
he was
late 90s, early 2000s. And basically, from the gist I've read, obviously you'd have to read more into him, is when you have something like that bad, or you hit a bad shot, you either need to let it go, focus on what you can do better for the next shot, and then approach it that way. So that was kind of the thing. Okay. And also the other thing was, these guys are very competitive, okay? They were off for 3 months with the whole COVID thing. So if you go to the PGA Tour, they hadn't played since the Players' Championship, and then they get back to Colonial. Well, Xander Schauffele is one of the top players in the world. I think he's like number 8 or number 9 in the world. And he said for those 3 months that they didn't play, he's like, I'm just itching. I'm really competitive. These guys are really competitive. Like, they want to win. But Bob Rotella kind of taught him, like, okay, you don't win, and let's say you gave it your all and you just came up a bit short. Yeah. You should be somewhat satisfied with it. You shouldn't be fully satisfied, but you should be somewhat satisfied with it. But don't let it affect you to the next round or the next tournament. So that was kind of his thing, was like, if you hit a bad shot, you need to get over it, things like that. And Brooks Koepka was my favorite golfer. Okay. And one of the reasons he is my favorite golfer, if you go to YouTube, go to the USGA channel, and you watch him play the 2017 and the 2018 Opens. So the 2017 Open was at Erin Hills in Wisconsin. 7,800 yards, had a bunch of wispy rough.
That's really long.
Yeah. They had, what was it? Last hole, I think, was 680-yard par 5, which is just stupid.
It's stupid.
The longest one I played is 665, to give you context. So that's 15 yards long.
And that's from the back tees. Yes, obviously.
Yeah. So he obviously dominated that tournament, and he used his length to his advantage. The next year, he went back-to-back, the last time a player did that was Curtis Strange back in 88-89. And, he was at that tournament, which made it even better.
That's awesome.
He was calling for Fox Sports at the time.
Wow.
But Shinnecock was totally different. It was baked out. It's on Long Island.
It's a wind.
Koepka won Aaron Hills, I think he was 16 or 17 under.
Yeah.
He won Shinnecock at +1. The first day he shot 75, okay, and it wasn't great. Oh, all right, I think it was like 4 or 5 over after the first day.
Yeah.
He comes back the next day, and this is why I like him. He comes back the next day and shoots a 4 under 66, okay? That is why mindset is important in golf. He could have said, screw it.
Absolutely.
Give up. So one of the things he's thinking about, obviously I don't think he was in danger of missing the cut because I think the cut was like 7 or 8 over. But he's like, how can I make a move? Yeah. So he made a move that day. He shot 75, then 66, then I believe it was 68, 69, and they shot 71 on the final round.
Even,
yeah. Yeah. I mean, that course was brutal.
Oh,
because it was baked out. It was under Long Island sun. They're playing in like 90-degree weather.
Yep.
USGA was only watering as absolutely necessary because they're, the USGA is the toughest.
It's the U.S. Open.
Yeah, it's the toughest test in golf. So for context for people, the U.S. Open, if you do not hit the fairway, you're going to be in like 3 to 4 inch rough. So U.S. Open this year, September, back at Wingfoot. Once again, I can remember Phil in 2006. I wish he would have won it, but he blew it way right on 18, made a double. Jeff Ogilvy won. And that's another one you can watch on YouTube. They have the USGA has all the U.S. Opens, U.S. Women's Opens. Good. I think U.S. Senior Opens on their channel. So, but if you watch it in September on NBC Sports and the Golf Channel, you're going to see rough that's 4 inches thick because the U.S. Open is the most demanding test because you have to hit fairways, you have to hit greens.
It's a fairway green
and those greens are pretty fast, they're pretty firm. They're probably going to run at 12 or 13. So for context, like some of these greens around here, they might be 10s or 11s top. So we're talking
tops.
Yeah. So we're talking
on a good day.
Yeah, so we're talking really, really fast greens.
Yeah.
Really firm fairways, narrow fairways in some spots.
Oh,
heavy rough, deep bunkers. So this is why golf mindset matters. If you hit it, because you're going to see a lot of people hit garbage shots out of the rough, some okay shots out of the bunker, bad putts. They're going to 3-putt, things like that. The best player that wins that tournament at the end of the week is going to have the best mindset, and they're going to be able to handle everything thrown at them from the golf course, maybe the elements, maybe it rains, stuff like that, and just everything, all the noise around them, where him and his caddy can just focus and say, I want to be a U.S. Open champion. That's the person. And that's kind of what Bob Rotella and some of these sports psychologists have tried to cultivate in the mind of any athlete, whether it's a basketball player, football player, softball, volleyball, track and field, all this. Because the best athletes have some of the best mindsets. And whether it's they're working with a sports psychologist or they're working on like self-development through books or, courses or things like that or TED Talks, that's what they see. So, yeah. And the hardest part also of golf is you may hit a combined total of like 5 minutes worth of shots. Yeah. The other 3.5 hours you're walking in between shots. So it's that's the mental grind of it.
Yeah, I was going to say. Yeah, because I was thinking about basketball players, just the pace of it. There's very little time for them to sit back and think about. They may have a timeout here and there.
Yeah.
Golfers, they're going to get 10 minutes between each shot. And it's just a weird world. And if you haven't played, it's hard to comprehend.
Yeah.
But if you've played, you'll get it, and you can put it. It helps you put into context how amazing these players are.
Well, and they are, and I mean it's like any professional athlete. This is their job. Yeah. They are. I mean, like for example, the NBA is coming back at the end of July. These guys are back at the facilities already because they know they've been ready for the season. I mean, the season stopped in March, obviously due to significant reasons, because 2 of the players for the Utah Jazz tested positive and they had to shut it down, which I applaud the NBA for. And I think Adam Silver, if you want to see a good leadership model of a large scale organization and business, Adam Silver is the guy I would look at out of all the professional leagues. Not that the other ones don't do a good job, but I think Adam Silver does an exceptional job. But, I mean, these guys are back in the practice facilities already because they know they have 3 weeks. They've stayed sharp. They've stayed.
Absolutely.
They a lot of them have personal trainers or strength and conditioning coaches.
They've got a team around them.
They do. And that's another interesting thing. Going back to, we can go back to golf, okay? So we go back to the 70s. About the only guy that was taking care of his body and maybe taking care of his mind was Gary Player, the Black Knight from South Africa. Yeah. And we know how successful he was.
Stud.
But you look at the guys that constantly won. Jack Nicklaus, who still has the record, 18 majors. He had a great mindset. Tom Watson, won, I think, like eight or nine majors.
So amazing.
Yeah, and he lives in the Kansas City area, which is
really
crazy. Which is crazy. Yeah, he's from that area. Yeah.
Okay. Cool.
And I think he built a couple golf courses down there, which is cool. I wish I could have played some of them, but maybe later on. But he had a great mindset. All these top level players had great mindsets. And a lot of these guys do have sports psychologists or somebody they call on. But also going back to kind of the model, a lot of these guys have personal trainer, strength coaches. Many of them have the same swing coach, the same personal trainer, strength coach. A lot of them have nutritionists. Golfers have become athletes, regardless of what people think. I would argue that golfers have become athletes now. There are very few players that look like they're out of shape. In the 70s, you could have pointed to everybody, but now you look at Koepka, you look at Rory McIlroy. I think Rory McIlroy's transformation from 2013 to now has been huge. I mean, he was he was a great golfer. But he was not a great athlete. He has turned into both.
He was a boy.
In
2013.
Well, no question. He
was a baby.
I remember looking at him, in like 2011, 2012, and like 2011. Okay, this was following the Masters collapse where I think he had a 4-shot lead heading into the back nine. He shot like 80. So he shot 37 on the front, 43 on the back. He comes back and wins the U.S. Open by 11 shots at Congressional out just outside of Bethesda, Maryland, just outside of Washington, D.C. That's another great example of mindset. But what I could think was, okay, Rory's looking a little bit better. By 2013, 2014, he looked like an athlete.
Yes.
And there are very few guys that look like, you guys can Google like Tim Herron or John Daly. And those guys provide entertainment.
Of course.
I'll tell you that. And they're still good players. But are they athletes? Absolutely not. You look at the Koepkas, you look at Dustin Johnson, you look at Rory McIlroy, you even look at Justin Thomas, Jordan Spieth. I mean, all those guys, that's why they have a PGA Tour fitness trailer now. Because those guys, either 2 to 3 hours before their round, are going to warm up and work out a little bit. Then they cool down. Then they go hit the range, go hit the practice, do their typical routine, and then they tee off. Okay, that's what's happening now. And the Champions Tour even has a fitness trailer. I
imagine even more psych. It's exponential when you're 50 plus.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, look at Bernhard Langer. Bernhard Langer, I believe, is he's 61. Okay, he won the Masters a couple times, and kind of into obscurity because in Germany nobody really plays golf. I mean, the main sport is football, or what we call soccer there, and he plays golf, and he is, I think he's 4 or 3 wins away from Hale Earn's Champions Tour record for wins all time. I mean, and he's 61, and he's still able to compete with the 50, 51, 52-year-olds.
Phenomenal.
For example, Phil Mickelson could go compete on the Champions Tour. He won't because he feels like he's still young, and he's done a great job. He's lost 30 to 40 pounds with something, you talked about. He did a little bit of intermittent fasting and some things to help him out. But I mean, just think about it. Like the Phil Mickelsons and the VJ Singhs and the Fred Couples are still out there, and Bernhard Langer are still beating him at 61. And, he's still staying in shape. Jeez. And he inspired, the best example he inspired was Martin Keimer, who won the 2015 U.S. Open at Pinehurst. So, those carryover effects have a long thing. So once again, I believe golfers are athletes. They've surrounded themselves with teams. Basically, every professional athlete has surrounded themselves with teams.
Exactly. That's what it takes.
Nutritionist, personal trainer, massage therapist, physio, whatever. Obviously, and then they have all the coaches at the organization. Especially for teams. So, and that's why they're so good. Is they're physically prepared and they're also mentally prepared. Amen. And a lot of those guys are not afraid of failure, and that's the other thing is they will hit a golf shot, and if they fail, that's okay, because at the end of the day, I mean, obviously some of them have a lot more money than others, but they're not afraid because they know, like for example, if they miss a golf shot and let's say they go from first to like fourth, they know the next golf tournament they may have a chance to win or finish second, so they're not afraid. Of that.
It's fascinating.
Yeah.
Love golf for so many different reasons. It's funny, we just touched on a lot of golf stuff, but amazing sport. You can play it when you're a baby, and you can play it when you're 80. It doesn't get any better.
Well, it's one of the few things that you can carry on for the rest of your life. And that's what this population in Prescott has, is obviously the access to golf courses, to tennis courts. So some people play tennis. I mean, I drive by Granville every day in PV, and I drove over here to the podcast this morning, and they're still doing pickleball out there at like 7 in the morning.
Yep.
It's a huge thing. We've treated some people like that. Their main hobby is pickleball, and it's
great.
Like I remember playing in PE, and that's about it.
Yeah.
And then there's adult softball leagues and hikers, because we have so many trails and people that just walk around the block. Yeah. So longevity is a big thing.
Big time.
And so, kind of going back to that's just the reason we do what we do at the Center for Physical Excellence, and that's the reason I do what I do. Still having my certified strength and conditioning specialist from the National Strength and Conditioning Association is to put out those exercises and things like that in the public domain. Yeah. And obviously my niche is golf, but all the exercises are not golf specific.
Of course.
All the exercises are fitness and exercise progression specific.
Yep. Nice. Before we close up, you've been here almost a year in the greater Prescott area. Mm-hmm. Tell us about your experience here thus far.
Well, it's cool because I didn't know what to expect. So obviously, like when I got here, the first week or two I was doing Airbnb, which obviously is a great way compared to hotels to save a little money. So I stayed over in Diamond Valley, kind of in between Prescott and PV, for a little over a week, and then I stayed around this area just off of Gurley. I can't remember the street. I think it was like Webb Street or something like that, behind like the Best Western.
Yes.
As you get off of 89. But both of those host houses were awesome.
Cool.
And then I found my place in Prescott Valley over by Mountain Valley Park. So I've been there since September. My neighbors are really awesome, so they'll bring me stuff, or they'll ask me. Like, I remember one of my neighbors called me the other night. It's like, "Hey, you got ranch dressing? We got pizza." I was like, "Sorry, man, I didn't go to Fry's or anything." So, so did that. But like everybody I've treated in the clinic for the most part has been awesome. Yeah. They've been welcoming. It's just been really cool. Obviously I did, like we talked about a little bit before the podcast. I saw the Christmas thing in December because Prescott's the Christmas city of Arizona,
which is
funny. So I've spent a lot of time in Cortez and Montezuma Street. Like I've been to like Bill's Pizza. I've been to Terrace Thai. I've been around that area.
Good. You're getting out.
Yeah. So I've seen that. I've spent a lot of time over there. I went to the rodeo last night, so that was a interesting experience. But like in Iowa, we have county fairs, so we have 99 counties in Iowa. I know here in Arizona it's 13 because they're large, which was another transition to me. I was like, what is Yavapai County? And it's like you have to get to Black Canyon City going south, and then you go to Ash Fork is like the northernmost.
Yeah.
I'm like, oh my God, how big is this county? But anyway, it's cool at the same time. It's different, because I'm used to 99 counties, because like you'd go 10, 15 miles and you'd be in a different county in Iowa. So the rodeo is kind of similar to like the county fairs we have, and one of the bigger ones we have in Iowa is called the Great Jones County Fair, and they'll bring in like country acts like Chris Stapleton and like Zach Brown Band and Tim McGraw and Faith Hill. So they do that a lot. So like the rodeo last night was kind of similar, but it was unique. So obviously I went with some coworkers, but it was good. It was cool to see.
I'm glad you got to go.
But yeah, it's just been unique because there are some elements from where I'm from in the Midwest. So there's some farmers and some hard work and things like that, like out in Chino, or some plots, out in like Prescott Valley or Dewey, or some other places you go depending on where you travel. Around the state, there's still some farm stuff. But then there's some uniqueness. I mean, there's a lot of old Western stuff because Prescott was built in 1861 and then Dewey was built in 1866. But, where I live in Prescott Valley, I think they've only been around since 66, and then Chino's only been around since 70. So those are kind of the newer places, and people that are younger like me, that's usually where they settle is Prescott Valley or Chino because one, they can find cheaper plots of land if they want to build a house, or they can find cheaper houses, and it's a little bit younger crowd. Not that we don't congregate in Prescott or Dewey, but, that's where a lot of younger people
your age.
Yeah.
How old are you?
35.
Yeah, I'm 37.
Yeah. Yeah, it's funny because people are like, "You're 35? You look like you're 27 or 28." I remember when I was first working there, like I think it was somebody at like the front desk or one of the physical therapist techs that help us out and do a great job. They're like, "I need to see your license." I was like, "Why?" They're like, "I don't believe it." So I showed them that, and they're like, and one of the techs over at Prescott Valley thought I was 25. So I was like, "No, man, I'm 35." He's like, "Are you kidding me?" I was like,
that's awesome.
Yeah, I was like, I'm young. It happens.
Well, my wife asked me before we started, how old's Andrew? Like, mid to late 20s. That's what I told her.
Yeah.
So,
yeah, nobody
keep it going.
Nobody at work believes I'm 35,
yeah,
so it's okay.
Good.
It's okay. I run with it.
To wrap it up, I'm going to ask you 7 questions. Give us what comes to mind just quickly. You ready?
Yeah.
What's your favorite thing about Greater Prescott?
The people.
Favorite restaurant so far in Greater Prescott?
Oh, man. I've had a lot of good ones.
Just go with them. Go.
Thai Cafe in Prescott Valley.
Okay. What's the number one thing on your Greater Prescott bucket list so that you haven't done that you want to do?
Ooh, number one thing I want to do on my bucket list. Dang.
Name a few.
There's probably some hikes I want to do.
Okay.
I like the Peavine Trail.
Yep.
Probably want to do Granite Mountain again. Yeah, just because it's hiking stuff like that. So yeah, around this area because I know, there's some trails that I hike more frequently, and probably the Iron King Trail in Prescott Valley would be another one too.
Okay. Who is your favorite all-time golfer?
Ooh, favorite all-time golfer? It's probably either Jack Nicklaus or Tiger Woods because they were so successul. And Jack, one of the things I took from Jack was how to visualize shots. So a lot of times when I'm playing a golf course and I want to see a shot, I got that from Nicklaus. And then Tiger just because he was an athlete and he was competitive and I just remember a lot of Tiger moments where it was like that's Tiger.
God, me too.
One of my favorite moments was the last time before we won the Masters last year, 2009 U.S. Open, that 18th hole putt, 10 feet. And I think everybody in the building knew he was going to make it, and he made it, and he just did that double fist pump. And then we didn't realize he tore his ACL and had a stress fracture in his tibia. And then he played another 18. He played 90, not really 90. He played 90 holes that week, but he played probably about 36 to 40 some holes on a.
Messed up.
Yeah. I mean that's just grit. I wouldn't recommend it, but
right.
I mean, that's a Tiger moment that I'll never forget.
Yeah. What are 3 words to describe living in Greater Prescott?
Cowboy.
Yeah.
Just cowboy, old school, genuine.
If you weren't a PT, what would you be?
Ooh. If I wasn't a PT, what would I be? I'd try to be like a strength and conditioning coach still, and probably be like golf specific. I don't know, maybe around here, somewhere like Florida or something, just because where the
weather's good.
Yeah. Well, obviously, and you have year-round, people come to train year-round, so you can keep your business up.
Last question. What's your favorite summer activity in Greater Prescott?
I mean, the rodeo was cool last night, so that was kind of cool to experience. And then obviously tomorrow I'll experience some of the fireworks, whether it's at Mountain Valley or I might go to Watson Lake. Yeah. That's another place I really like is the hike there. I took my parents when they came out here in January. Probably some of the stuff that goes downtown, Cortez and Montezuma, because there's always something going on in the summer. I just remember when I got here in August, like every weekend there was something going on. So I think that's cool that they have a courthouse in the middle, and then they have the 2 streets where you can just kind of walk around. Cool. And then you've got all the businesses to support the local businesses. Then just the other stuff is being able to hike almost anywhere, and obviously for me, play golf almost anywhere.
Yeah. Where have you played up here so far?
I have played both courses at Antelope Hills. Yeah. I have played Prescott Golf and Country Club, Stone Ridge, and I did get invited by one member of Capital Canyon to play. I'm still waiting on Talking Rock and Prescott Lakes, and then.
So you haven't played Capital Canyon yet?
No, I played Capital Canyon.
You did.
I have not played Talking Rock or Prescott Lakes.
Okay.
But I have a lot of contacts there and given them my number, so we'll see
of course.
They bring the digits.
Nice.
And then today. One of the things I'm thinking about doing in October is the Arizona Golf Association has the Northern Amateur up at Oak Creek, and I'm going to play up there today.
Oak Creek's beautiful.
Yeah. Oh, it's a fantastic. Well, it's a Robert Trent Jones Sr. Jr., who are 2 of the most famous golf course architects in America. So
playing the Robert Trent Jones Trail is on my bucket list.
That's like, one thing I want to do because we had a guy in the clinic and he's like, you need to go down there and play.
Oh,
I was like, well, I don't have enough vacation time, and he's like, well, eventually. I was like, yeah. From Alabama.
I would love to talk about golf courses. We don't have time for it, but yeah, another reason that makes Arizona really diverse. The golf here, it's wildly diverse.
Yeah, because I went down to I've played 2 courses, which is funny. Wickenburg has 2,200 people, and they have 3 golf courses, and 2 of the nicest ones, Wickenburg Ranch and Los Caballeros. And both of those golf courses are kind of desert where you see in Phoenix. Mm-hmm. And then you play like a course like Antelope Hills, or you go up to like Elephant Rocks and Williams, and it's more typical to kind of what I played in Iowa, tree line and stuff like that. Mm-hmm. So, yeah, that's kind of the thing about Arizona. It's very diverse.
Very diverse.
So if you go down to Phoenix, obviously there's more kind of like desert. So there's more like waste area, which is like bunkers with like really grainy, gritty, like rocky sand.
No, it's awful sand.
It's awful if you're in there. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, that is true.
So you see that. So you see that as you go more south. As you stay up here and you go up north, it's more kind of typical of what I played. It's slightly different. Yeah. And then obviously the biggest difference for me with the Phoenix courses is they have Bermuda, which is kind of a sticky, spongy grass. Absolutely. So sometimes your club gets stuck in there, and it's like So
that's interesting. You have spent your entire life on a different type of grass.
Yeah.
Even in Phoenix compared to up here.
Yeah.
There's nuances. You guys have no idea how much grass type changes the way things work.
Oh yeah.
We talked about the golf swing, and it's wildly sophisticated.
Yeah.
Then you get on a different golf course. In different conditions every single day.
Yeah.
These guys are just. We could go on.
Yeah, let's go to the PGA Tour restart. So Texas, Colonial, I believe, was all Bermuda. So that's very similar because Bermuda is a grass that doesn't like cold weather and it needs warm weather all year. So that's that's because there's more Bermuda in, Texas, Florida, Arizona because it can stand that. Then they went to South Carolina, which was pretty similar, all Bermuda as well, but it was a different type. It was a grainier Bermuda. Okay. So that's why a lot of players said it was hard to read. Then they went up to Cromwell, Connecticut, which was bent Kentucky Blue, which would be more what I'm used to playing. Yep. And then they're in Detroit, Michigan, which would be the same, and I think that's like all bent. So, yeah.
These guys.
Yeah, and then they're going to go to Ohio next for 2 events, and then, So it's going to be it's still going to be bent up there because Ohio obviously gets colder in the winter. So
Yep. Andrew, thank you so much.
Thanks.
You guys, I hope you learned a little something. I know I've never heard more about the PT world, and I haven't talked this much about golf for a long time, so it's really refreshing. So if you guys need any type of physical therapy type stuff, give Andrew a phone call. Also, the Center of Physical Excellence.
Yep, Center for Physical Excellence.
Yeah, so tell people how they can reach you.
Yeah, so the Center for Physical Excellence has 3 locations depending on where you're at. So the centralized locations is where I work, which is the crossings at Willow Creek. You can go to the centerforphysical.excellence.com. We have all 3 phone numbers there for the clinics. If you're more towards like the Thumb Butte western part, you can go to the clinic on Idlewild. Mm-hmm. And then obviously if you're in Prescott Valley, you can go to the clinic on Longwood. So just give us a call. If you just want to set up a consult, you can. If you get a referral from your primary care and you want to straight up do an initial evaluation with one of our physical therapists, you can. And then we'll get the ball rolling. We're always looking to accept new people. And then, you can call the main office for any insurance or financial issues as well.
Yep. I'll put all the information in the podcast.
All right.
Awesome. You guys, I hope you learned something. I hope Andrew was able to provide you something of value. So if you like golf, you're definitely going to learn something. And if you didn't know anything about physical therapy, you're definitely going to have learned something. So again, thank you so much for your time, guys, and have a great day.